You know the exact feeling. You set a new goal, a diet, a side project, a workout routine, and an overwhelming surge of energy takes over. You dive in. For 3 days, you execute perfectly. Then, the friction hits. The energy evaporates, and by day 5, the new habit is dead. The instinct here is to blame your own discipline, but you're likely blaming the wrong thing. You are relying on a tool that wasn't built for long-term use. You are relying on motivation. And motivation is a temporary emotional state. It spikes and crashes based on factors you don't always control. Motivation peaks when tasks are new, when the effort feels light, and when progress is visible. But actual progress requires slow, repetitive execution. Motivation isn't designed to survive in that environment. This creates a predictable cycle. You wait to feel motivated, then you act. When work gets dull, the feeling fades, and you stop. Notice what happens when difficulty increases. The loop collapses. Tying actions to fluctuating emotions makes consistency impossible. To escape this, you have to stop chasing a specific mood. You need to replace the pursuit of a feeling with a structural framework. This requires moving our focus from the mind to our surroundings. We can treat consistency as a design challenge. The very first pillar is building systems. Operating on motivation forces your brain to constantly negotiate, asking, "Do I feel like working right now?" That daily decision-making is exhausting. This diagram compares two approaches. On the left is a feeling-based intention, waiting until you are ready. On the right is a systemic rule. I work every day at 6 p.m. The system removes the need to make a new choice every single day. But a system only works if your physical environment supports it. Your surroundings shape your behavior more effectively than internal resolve. If your phone is sitting on your desk while you try to focus, you're burning energy trying to ignore it. The proximity of a distraction makes it much more likely you'll get sidetracked. Environment design is about changing your space to make good actions easier. If you want to work, put the phone in another room and set out your tools ahead of time. Focus isn't something you find by trying harder. It's something you protect by reducing the friction in your environment. Once the physical environment is secured, we can look back at the internal side, specifically how you view yourself. Highly consistent people often have a different self-concept. They don't see themselves as people who need to feel a certain way before they start. They've moved away from the idea of getting motivated. Instead, they adopt a specific identity. I am the kind of person who does the work. When you view an action as part of who you are, it requires less effort to start. It moves from being a one-time event to a baseline behavior. While this shift takes time to develop, it eventually changes your starting point. You begin to act not because you're following a mood, but because it's consistent with the person you've become. This architecture works because it reverses the common assumption of how we get things done. Most of us followed this timeline. We need motivation first, which leads to action, and finally a result. But in practice, the order is flipped. Motivation is the byproduct. You take a small action, see a result, and that generates the motivation to keep going. Since action must come first, your primary goal is to lower the barrier to entry. You need to trigger that first step without a fight. You do this by making the first step very small. Read 1 page. Write 1 sentence. Shrink the task and you reduce the resistance to starting. The people who stay consistent over the long term aren't necessarily the ones who feel the most driven. They are the ones who built the structures that allow them to show up, even when they feel nothing at all.